that's something that you want to look for, 3 or 4 ply. If you're doing like cables, anything that needs like more stitch definition, the more plies, the more stitch definition you will have. Also, let me just look at my note. Multiply perfect balance. Yeah. Of course, it's square. No, it's mostly what I wanted to talk about with plies in construction is, more plies means more durability. We're going to talk about twist later, but if you're thinking about pilling, of course, like, longer fibers, more plies always means like more protection to your project. So that you need to keep in mind. And then maybe a note also on, like novelty yarns or like tubes and cables, yarns that we call cable yarns. These ones most of the time are very light but warm. So these could be fun for a project that you don't want to be too heavy, but keep you warm in the colder months. You want to look for yarns that have a lot of air in them. Yeah,
absolutely. And so things like holding mohair with a project, blow yarns. So those are like nylon or cotton tubes where the fiber's loosely blown into the center of them. Very light and lofty. Oftentimes people think they will be cooler, but the loose hairs and the fiber trap the warmth from your body. So they are, even though your open, your single strand of silk mohair, which you've knit on a big open needle, looks like an open fabric, it's warm. Yes, perfect.
I have this one here that I was showing in a video earlier this week. It's a single strand of fingering mohair knit on an 8mm.
Wow.
It's super warm.
Beautiful.
Super warm. And you see, like, it's see-through, but it's a very warm sweater.
Perfect. So what about if you wanted, like, is there anything with terms of plies with how it's going to affect drape necessarily, or is it more resilience?
But it does affect drape too, because the tide, so it kind of goes with twist, like the other thing that we're going to get into. The tighter the twist, the more, I guess less, I was going to say more, but less drapey.
Yeah.
I don't know. It works.
Well, I mean, this is a good segue. Let's pivot. So now we've got our plies of yarn. We figured out what's happening with them at the mill. So do you want to describe what's the difference? Like, how do you, as a mill or as a yarn designer, how do you work with that mill to talk about what kind of twist you want?
So, and now I'm going to get into very specific things, but so it's measured by inches.
Yeah.
And then actually, like, when you look at yarns, like, you'll look at 1 inch of yarn, like how many twists or like strands that you can see on there.
Funny. So it's almost like wraps per inch, but in the strand of yarn itself.
Twist per inch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes by quarter of a twist.
Yeah.
So then you'll say, like, add a quarter or add like half a twist. And then the thing that you don't, if ever you make yarn someday, like, even if you say like, oh, a quarter twist, it's a lot, because that quarter twist like goes throughout the whole strand, and it almost like it adds up.
Actually, I'm thinking of my talk about gardening earlier, and my gardening hose. You twist it once, and then it's kinking all the way at the back. Like, it's the same thing.
It's true. So the tighter the twist, I want to say less drapey it is. Yeah. Just because there's less place for movement. It's like, because it's like stronger and it's hold together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so how can those, I mean, we've talked a little bit about how they change the fiber fabric in terms of bias, in terms of resilience. What about something like bounce, like texture,
True. So weirdly, because you said bounce, and here's what I thought in my mind. So, of course, the less, the longer fabric, the more twist, the more plies is going to be in the yarn, like the less bounce there's going to be. But also when I think about that, like one of our bouncier yarn is our worsted weight. It has 4 plies.
Yeah.
It's sort of high twisted, but because it's a bigger yarn, then it is bouncy.
Right.
So, so it really, and this is where the like your swatch come in, and really you have to swatch if you want to know how a fiber is going to behave.
Yes.
I do, you know, of course, I, you know, like you're going to make a hat or a small project and then you don't make a gauge. It's probably going to turn out fine. Or you will, actually, it's almost like your small project is your gauge.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, this is not working. Like I need to go up a needle size or anything like that. But true, like, so for bounce, as we're saying, like blown yarns, cable, or, you know, like I call them tube yarns, but they're almost like, there's some yarns that look like a chainette, but I think that's what they're called.
Yeah, chainette.
Yeah. So, you know, that has a lot of bounce, but if this is what you're looking for, or, you know, like a lofty fabric, then of course it has to do with, shorter fibers. I find that it even has to do with maybe smaller needles and like tighter fabric. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
I hope that this makes sense. I want to say my brain works in mysterious ways. I hope.
Well, it's hard too, because once you start talking about one thing, as with everything with yarn and fiber, it's like, oh, well, there's 50 other ways that this could interact with each other. I mean, just to sum up here, we've now just we've talked a little bit about fiber, you know, is it wool, is it cotton, is it linen? How is it being plied together? How is it being treated in the mill? How are those plies of yarn being worked together, and what construction? So before we've even selected our yarn or you know, gone any further, there's so many choices to make. And this is why, for myself as a shop owner, we swatch every single yarn that comes into the store on a few different needle sizes. Because even people who watch yarn all day, it can still surprise you. Upon blocking. So always swatch and block, because there's definitely yarns where we've swatched it and we're like, I wasn't expecting this to bias, but it is, you know? And so even if all of those telltale signs are there when you're looking at a ball of yarn, you know, always swatch, always swatch.
Sure.
All right. So we've chosen some yarn. How do we make sure it behaves in our project?
Okay. Okay, so we are at the segment 2.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we can go back. I feel as though we could talk about twist fabric for a long time. Do you want, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we move on?
I feel like we sort of covered it, and then if people have questions at the end, maybe we can go into specific.
I think they will have questions.
But how to make the yarn behave, eh? Because you select the yarn. So let's say you're thinking, I want to make a hat to go skiing. I need it to be warm but durable. So then, you're thinking, I'm going to choose a 3-ply merino DK yarn. I will add a strand of mohair so that I get a little fluff. And, I'm going to do a 2x2 rib so that it's even loftier. Then you have this yarn, you have your project, and then you start swatching. And let's say you use the recommended needle size, and then you find that it's too stiff, it doesn't move as much as you want it to. Then, of course, you can try bigger needles. You might need to change the pattern.
It's worth noting, I hear that a lot. I don't know what went wrong. I use the needles recommended in the pattern. I hear that all the time. And needles are half the story. Needles are half the story. The other half of the story is the knitter. Our hands, how we knit, how we wrapping the yarn can change everything.
Even the style that you knit. Like I'm a thrower. Like even the way that depending on the days, that it is. Like if I'm sick or if I'm tired, I don't even have the same gauge with the same yarn.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so choosing needle size to get different fabric rendition. Then just starting with that, of course. Going up or down one size, two size of needles is going to change things dramatically. And you can see it when you start. It's not long that you can see if this is going to do what you want it to do. And we talked briefly about blocking before, but it's even after you need to block it because then it might change completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've definitely blocked on my needles before, or like taken half a swatch. I'm like, oh, I don't even want to finish the swatch. I gotta block it now.
True.
Yeah. And the other thing too that often if you're starting that journey is we often recommend measure your unblocked gauge in your swatch and then measure it after you block it, because then when you're knitting your garment, your hat, or whatever it is, you'll know, okay, if my unblocked gauge is this, I know how it's going to behave. But if your unblocked gauge, something happens is bigger. Ooh,
I don't. Something came up into my mind. I don't know if some people will find this too much, but if there's yarns that you like or yarns that you're used to knitting with, either keep your swatches and have like notes to go with them, or you can make like a little notebook or on Ravelry. Just knowing, like I've worked with this yarn before. Here's what it looked like. I liked it at 4 millimeters needle, 26 stitches, all of that. And what it did for you. And I find that this saves a lot of time in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. No. What was I going to say? Oh, I had a thing. I was going to ask about how blocking can affect. Like, is there one way to block? I often, like, there's some people who block out to, like, really block out to get the dimensions of a pattern versus kind of letting it sit and drying naturally.
It really, okay, but again, it depends on what you want to do with it. If you're making a shawl and you really want it to be open, of course you're going to block it, like we say, aggressively. But one thing that comes to mind when you mention that, working with superwash yarn, sometimes when you make sweaters, I know like you're going to knit for someone who's not a knitter, you're going to crochet a piece that's for someone who's going to put it in the washing machine. So using superwash yarns, you need to be careful to look at really how it grows when it's washed. And even like I'm thinking, even if you're gifting this to someone, you need to tell this person that at least when they're washing it, like it's almost, I find that it's almost like you're cradling a baby. And you need to sort of be careful with it, because even though it's meant for machine washing, it does grow a lot when you block it. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's all superwash yarns. The reason for that is that superwash yarns have been processed to remove the scales on the exterior of the fiber, and so there's nothing. It's a very smooth, slick wool. And so it's not very structurally stable. It'll slip in the stitches, almost like a silk will. Yeah.
No, so that's the main thing that comes to mind. And then when you want to block it the same way that you're going to wash it. So I'm not talking about superwash now. I'm just talking like regularly. Just care for your swatch the same way that you're going to care for that garment later on, and then you'll have a better picture.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Can you give an example of like when you swatched yarns at a different gauge? Did it change your opinion of that yarn or what you wanted to use it for?
True. So like I'm thinking. So for example, like in my mind, I have like this sweater that I knitted using Nurture. It's a woolen spun yarn. Similar to, anything that you could get from like Ayersville, Brooklyn Tweed back in the day. So this yarn I really like for cable knitting, and just because it's light and, like you'll be able to do something intricate. And so knitting it at a different, so I find that knitting at different, with different needle sizes for cables and, more structured stitch patterns makes a huge difference in your happiness of the finished product.
Yeah.
Maybe for the French, I'm not sure.
You're right. You're totally right.
For this, but what's your experience with this? I find that it's with cables, like, like lace patterns. I mean, it's open. We want it to be open. We're happy about that. I find that cables, if they're too tight, can be so disappointing.
Yeah, and I find too, especially with more rustic wools, the tighter the fabric is, the harsher it feels. Like the more woolly it feels. I don't know why that is. If for some reason when I'm blocking out woolly fibers, the more space that they have to kind of relax in the fabric, it just feels softer to my hand. Yeah.
I don't know if we want to mention that now, but it's popping in my head now. I brought I brought an example. One thing that I, with yarn behaving and, swatching, I find color work, you need to swatch because you need to see, and I know that, sometimes we're going to knit it in the round, so you want to do your swatch in the round, but you really need to look at how you carry your yarn and how it's going to translate into your motifs. Because like the sweater that I'm wearing right now, it knits really flat and it's very comfortable. Okay. And so I'm happy with this one. And then this sweater that I've knitted myself, that I wear sometimes, that, I finished and, I'm not too happy with, not because it's not a good pattern or it's not a good sweater. It's because of how I knitted it. And maybe I should have changed a couple of things in it. Because it carries 3 colors, like you will see in this part, that it's bunched up a little bit, and there's nothing I can do for it. And I kind of didn't catch that when I knitted it. So where I'm going with this one is made with Les UTK or superwash yarn. And I find that when you do color work with superwash yarns, you need to be careful of your floats, of how you carry your yarn in color work, because this happens, in my experience, at least more often. Yeah. Because when you're going to wear it, like, because it's superwash, and we said, like it's almost like silk. Once you block it, it's like, it is what it is. And then it becomes like it's not but like a one strand thing. Yeah. Does that make sense? So now if this bunches up and like sort of my shoulders don't really fit into it, I'm done. Like there's nothing I can do with it now.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, color work with superwash yarn, you really need to study it.
Yeah. And I would say beyond superwash too, anything that's really high twist, I would be a little bit concerned about in color work. Not that you can't do it or that I haven't seen it done successfully or anything like that, but sometimes that elasticity or that bounce when you're trying to measure, or like when you're trying to control your float tension, it can work against you a little bit, which I think is
because then it comes back to like it bounces back, and that's what I think this is what happens with superwash when you do color work. It's like it's bouncy. Yeah. So then you're not realizing it, and it's it's coming back to you. Yeah,
exactly.
And when you block it, it's sort of stuck like this.
And you're anyone who's done a lot of color work projects will know this. It's quite common in color work yoke sweaters, for instance, that you do your whole color work portion on a bigger size needle than your body. Yes. The reason for that is that color work will naturally draw in the fabric a bit tighter. So that puckering is super common. Oftentimes people, to me, they go, do I really need that second needle? And it's like, you don't need it, but if you want the best success for your everything to like sit flat and relax, that's why. Yeah.
True.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I feel like we could just talk about color work and yarn selection for a whole other hour, but we'll keep going. Can you so what do you think about so let's do like a thought experiment. If we thought about taking one yarn and you're working it on a really small needle for the size and kind of a medium-sized needle for the size of the yarn and a really big needle, how is the fabric going to change between those 3 swatches?
So, of course, you will see. So you will see there's going to be a difference in drape, because the fiber has more space to do its own thing.
So smaller needle, less drape.
Exactly,
needle, more
to
drape.
the bigger needle where there's more drape. In terms of durability, that's like I find that it's a double-edged sword because if you make like a really tight gauge, then you're like, oh, this is gonna be durable. But also, like sometimes your fabric is so tight that I don't know what the word would be for this, but then it almost becomes fragile.
Yeah, you're almost putting stress on the fibers as you're working them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and your needles for that matter.
Huh?
I said and your needles for that matter if you're knitting that tight.
But it's true, like so for like one good example is socks, and I know people who are like, okay, I want my socks to be like a bulletproof fabric. Some of the time it's not going to be comfortable wearing them because they're like too tight. But anyway, I hope this makes sense, but it's going to change. It's going to change durability.
So we can say maybe roughly the larger the gauge or the more open the fabric, the less durable. The tighter the gauge, the more durable, asterisk, up to a certain point.
Up to a certain point, and then, you're going to have a different drape. So the drape goes up with the bigger needles. And then if it's, if people are concerned about pills, then yes, like a looser gauge, depending on your yarn, has more pilling possibility. Yeah,
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, it's funny that we have gone through this whole conversation so far without talking about pilling. Do you want to? Should we very briefly talk about pilling?
I have a little section about pilling.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, well, keep scrolling down. Keep going down.
No. Is it later? I thought it was before.
No, you're right. It is before. I just I got really excited about Twist. All right, let's pause and talk about pilling because pilling is a hot topic.
Yeah. So what I had prepared for you is, when you're thinking about pills, you want to think about, hold on, 1, 2, in my mind I'm like 4, but then I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, Julie, what did you write? So for pills, you want to think about fiber content. So we saw that before, right? Longer staple fiber such as BFL, alpaca, are going to have less spills because they have less, there's less ends showing up on a designated section. So the shorter fibers, they have more ends, and this is where the pilling happen.
Yeah. So just to think about that visually, if we're thinking about fiber, like yarn fiber and a ply, what we're describing is like if you're twisting all those yarns into a rope, into a plied yarn, if it's a long fiber, all those ends are getting twisted up into the ply. If you've got a bunch of little short fibers like cashmere, you're twisting it in the ply, and then all those ends are kind of poking out, right? And so it's the brushing, the friction that's going to bring more of those out and cause the pill.
Yeah, and people, and even if you're not like a yarn construction enthusiast, you can see it for yourself. Already, like in your fiber journey, you'll see these things by yourself where, generally speaking, the softer it is, the pillier it's going to get.
Yeah.
And it's not like, for some people, sometimes it can be seen as a default. You just need to know what to expect.
Absolutely.
And, you want a cashmere hat, that you're going to need to take care of it. So it's mostly that. And then I wanted to mention that, woolen spun yarns, because they're made like, the yarn construction is more like a little cloud because the fibers are less aligned. There's more pilling at the beginning with that. But then I find that once you've taken care of that first pill session, then you're good to go for a long while. So worsted spun, the one that's more, the yarns that are more aligned, so the less rustic yarns do have a little less pilling in terms of how they were spun. The more ply, the less spills, and also more twist because it's firmer, less spills. So that's what we want to be thinking about.
Absolutely. The one more thing I'll say there to talking about like the plies and wrapping, Especially this time of year, I get a lot of, especially newer knitters or people earlier on in their fiber journey, they get excited by big, bulky knits. So working on a big, heavy gauge yarn on an 8 or a 9 or a 10 millimeter needle. Those yarns, by and large, they're usually single ply, or they're often single ply. They're often merinos. They will pill, and they're also really expensive. So sometimes, like, I have lots of knitters that come in that are really excited to make their first big chunky sweater, and we have to make sure that we talk to them and make sure the expectation is managed that it's going to pill like the Dickens forever. It just will.
So,
but it'll be soft and cozy, and there's trade-offs to it. Nothing wrong with it pilling.
One thing that I've noted, there's a couple of yarns that are like that, and it's not. So here's where my head went. It's not because I have one that I'm saying this, but when you choose like single ply, if you choose chunky. And probably at the shop you have a couple options, is there are some chunky single ply yarns that are sort of like pre-felted-ish.
Yeah.
And yes, these ones are harder wearing than, if you go with like a fluffy superwash on felted yarn. So that's something that you would want to look for if that's important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking back to the craze of the giant blankets where everyone was knitting them on like 25 millimeter needles, and you blinked at them and they pilled like crazy. A lot of
it looks good.
It looks really good. Take the pic, lay it out, take the picture for Instagram, and then walk away. All right, so we've talked a little bit about pilling. Oh, actually, Julie, I should ask, what's your favorite pill removal tool? How do you like to brew?
I do use, so it's funny because when I was preparing this, I was actually reviewing a couple of things. So Gleaner, I like to use the Gleaner. I like that. I'm also kind of old school with the little what's the almost the razor.
The razor, yeah.
And I will say, and I was reading up, and that's why I say this, like I was reading up on this, and again, depending on what type of yarn it is, like if you have, so shorter fibers, if there's really like some pilling and you can see the pills like coming off, I was reading, someone was saying that it's probably better to like snip them off, right, or like sort of like razor them off.
Yeah, rather than pull more fiber
without pulling on it and or touching it, because then you're creating more.
Yeah. So
then I think it really depends on the job that you're going for.
Totally. Yeah. Some of the wool combs, depending on again what fabric you're trying to depill, some of the wool combs can actually pull more fiber out. So you're removing it, but then it's getting better. Yeah.
So snipping them with scissors is a good idea.
Yeah. All right. So, shall we talk a little bit about choosing the right project for our yarn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, we're going to cover how to pick the right project for our yarn, how to pick the right yarn for our project, and then project for our yarn. So we're going to go at this from both directions. And then we'll just kind of run through some of our preferred fiber constructions, yarn constructions, and our favorite projects for them. All right, so let's go pattern first. We've chosen our beautiful pattern that we want to make. How do we decide what yarn to choose? What questions are we going to ask ourselves?
So I want to say, when I was preparing to come on here with you, I loved how this was all prepared, because it really made me, I really had to think about how I wanted to approach this. So you have a pattern. So I'm not talking about yarns yet. And what you need to think about is, in my opinion, you need to think about the end game. Like, what are you looking for? And it's a little bit like you said earlier, what are your priorities? What do you want in this project? So like if you're thinking, I want to knit myself a really cute beret that's going to be like I'm almost seeing like a cashmere sort of like open thing that's really just a sort almost like an accessory. Then your primary goal is aesthetic, then it's going to be, I don't know, sequin, cashmere, a little fluff. things like that. And then that's how you choose your yarn, because you know that it's not going to get a lot of wear. If we go to my example of I am knitting a ski sweater that I'll be wearing all season, going outside for hikes, all of that, then you are thinking durability, lightness, and probably like not easy care, but just what I have in my mind right now, just because we're talking sport. So like easily washable, but not necessarily like super washed. That's not what I mean necessarily. So, when you think of that, then, like you're going to think, I want to knit this sweater. I need it to be light and durable. Then, you're going to think plied. You could go woolen spun, because you're thinking I want a light, airy fabric. You don't necessarily need drape, because that's not what this is for. So then you might be looking at wool. It's really, for me, it's really thinking about what do you want to achieve with this project? What are you looking for? And then what characteristic in this yarn makes this make this goal happen? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. To add to that as well, I think something that's really helpful for people when you're choosing a pattern is to think, what is it about this pattern that's appealing to me? Is it the shape? Is it the construction of the piece? Is it the fabric? How, say, for example, I'm making something with a shawl collar. Is the shawl collar on the model lying flat? Is it stiff? Does it have texture? Those kinds of characters. What's drawing to you to that pattern? Sometimes that will help consolidate. Okay, what yarn am I gonna choose? Because if I'm looking at the pattern, I'm going, I love the construction of this. I love that shawl collar, how it's really statuesque and giving structure. But I need this to be really soft and cozy and cuddly. Well, we're already at a misalignment, right?
No. Exactly. So then if you're drawn, as you said, if you're drawn to structure, then you're looking at ply and, almost like stiffness in a way. So you want to impart that into your knitting. So needle size, plies in your yarn, again, like how the fibers are constructed. I know I'm going back to woolen spun, but it could be for that particular example. And this comes with experience, right?
Totally.
And going to your local yarn shop to ask for advice.
Where we've seen all the yarn be knit up by all of our fabulous knitters. And so we get the benefit of knitting vicariously through our customers. So we get to see our project stash or our project queue is a lot bigger than the average knitter as a result.
Almost like it's funny, because for me, like local yarn shop, it's a lot about community. And then when I say community, I almost think like friendship.
Yeah.
But it is really, and it's not something new. It's just, it has to do with the subject. A yarn shop is really about support and just like making sure that your project is successful.
Yeah, especially if you have the opportunity to develop a longer term relationship with that person, where you chose a yarn for your project, you completed it, you liked it or didn't it. Go back into the shop, have a conversation with that person. I liked this yarn because blank. I don't like this yarn because blank. I'm happy that this worked out. I really struggled with this. All of those kinds of conversations that you have, whether it's with a friend or a yarn shop owner or someone online on social media, those things can be really helpful for making learning lessons for a successful choice next time.
Yeah.
So what pattern features, like what are some things in a pattern from construction or anything like that will give you key things to think about when you're choosing yarn?
The first thing that comes to mind is if your sweater is knit in the round, if it's sewn, if you, because it's going to change a lot the way that your garment is going to look. And I know that we're mostly talking about sweaters, but I find that when we're talking about structure, it has to do with garments.
Yes. And ironically, like sweaters, and I see there's a lot of construction in summer garments too. You see a lot more seamed together summer garments, because if you're knitting in silk or linen, That added structure of the seam is really important.
Yeah. But yeah, for me is that knitting in the round. It's almost like you need to have a yarn that goes with knitting in the round, and then knitting in the round in itself is a bias. You need to. I'm saying you need, but you can do whatever you want. You need to use a yarn that has plies. It can have drape, but you will know that your sweater is going to be drapey, or almost like when you're sewing and you're cutting fabric on the bias, it will have this effect. So some summer tank top could be useful depending on what you're doing, but yeah, does that answer the question, or you can repeat? I'm trying to think. I'm like, am I missing something?
I mean, honestly, it's such an open-ended question because it really depends what pattern are we talking about here, right? Yeah. I mean, the one thing too is when you're looking at a pattern, what yarn does the designer recommend? That doesn't have to be what you choose. There's a bajillion yarns out there. No one yarn shop can carry them all. There's a lot that are very similar. But like, why did the designer choose that yarn is always something that I wonder.
You're making me think, and I'm going to take a note, because sometimes, with designers that make, we work with designers together to, we're always very fortunate that, designers want to use our yarns to make patterns in our yarns. And I'm thinking it would be interesting if sometimes people do it, but I don't see it often, is if they were to say why they what's the characteristic that they were looking for.
Oh, totally. That's my, honestly, that's my big beef as a yarn shop owner, is there's a lot of beautiful patterns out there that are made with incredibly niche yarns, whether they be niche construction or niche, availability, or, worldwide availability or whatever. And sometimes I'm like, sometimes the designer has come across a yarn and they're so excited about it that they just want to use it and design it. And sometimes I'm like, why, could it have been made more accessible for the average knitter across the world versus, this very small subset that can get this really specific product? And what can I, as a yarn shop owner, what commercially available products do I have that can mimic or try to achieve the same effect, right?
Yeah. True. So when, also you're making me think, you were thinking structure, and I'm thinking if you're knitting like a sweater with satin sleeves, of course you want a yarn that's not going to move. So when you make your swatch, you want a cohesive fabric, if it makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, too, the size, going back to the size of the project, one thing, if you're a madhouse person like me, you can weigh your swatches down. So if you're making, for example, the pattern that pops in my hand is the car coat from Church Mouse, which is a huge, a big heavy trench. And I think the gauge is 16 stitches. So it's a big piece. Well, my little swatch is not going to tell the full story about what that garment's going to need to do. So even pinning it, hanging it, letting it hang out in the sun, whatever it is, that will start to again mimic a little bit the final project.
True. And I've seen, it's something that I was mentioning in one of my other class. I just remembered it now. You can get at the, at the hardware store, or those little knee, and it can even be just from your blocking set. But it's just back in the days that I got a little knee pad for the garden, but it's just to pin your swatch upright. So that you can see how it's going to behave.
Exactly. Because sometimes you'll block, you'll think it block straight and then it'll dry bias or whatever. There's some weird things that can happen.
Because you don't wear it flat, you wear it standing up.
Exactly. So when you're trying to think about yarn selection for patterns, or you're substituting, what are some negotiable versus non-negotiable with when you're thinking about what fabric you're trying to achieve?
So I think so if I go to the core of the yarn, okay? So we're making yarn. Fiber content to some extent. Sometimes So if you need to have the same structure or you want like the same outlook, I do think that you need to have a similar fiber content.
Yep.
Then when you start playing with fiber content, then you know you're going to have a different outcome. What comes to mind is like if you were to knit a vest or a tank top, you know, sometimes you can make it out of wool or out of a summer yarn and it's going to be a great garment, just a different look.
Yep.
Then if the yarn is woolen or worsted spun, it does matter, but it probably doesn't matter in most of the cases. And then I do think that you need to look like, so if you like the look of something that's single ply, then, you know, working with a plied yarn is not going to have the same effect. So that's why also like single ply yarns for garment are not always the best idea. And then I think twist mostly for durability. So then not necessarily that you don't need to think about it, but other than if it's about drape, then I don't think you need to worry about it too much.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when we're talking about like fiber substitution too, one thing that we do a lot in the in local yarn shops is like we try to often group fibers together. So you know, for instance, someone might come in and ask for a wool viscose blend or something, and we'll say, okay, wool silk. You know, viscose and silk are acting very similarly in this yarn. They're both drapey, you know, drapey fiber. So there's little things like that too, where if you're go into the realm of super nerddom of fiber knowledge, where you can start to equate, you know, even nitty gritty. Okay, what is this fiber content doing in this yarn? One thing that I see a lot of from yarn companies, not made in Canada but made in Europe, is cotton cashmere. And so I see that a lot, and then I have people coming into the store. I want, especially baby garments, for whatever reason, I want this cotton cashmere, and it's like, okay, so why is that important? Is there another, like, can I get a wool that's doing the same job as the cashmere? Like, is there another way that I can echo the same fiber without getting an exact match?
Yeah. True.
Yeah. And the answer to that is always swatch when you're you're going off. Okay, so what shall we go the opposite direction?
Yes. So you mean like starting with a yarn?
Yeah. So let's say I kind of want to just choose one of your yarns, but I won't put you on the spot. I'll let you choose a yarn. Someone starts with a yarn. How do they find the right project for it? How do they find the right pattern?
So it's just funnily, my brain was like, how many skeins did you get? But, hold on.
So true. Yes. You can't get garment quantities in every yarn we love, unfortunately. Sometimes hard decisions have to be made at the yarn shop when we've got quantity.
No, but okay. So let's say that some yarns can basically do anything. You know, so it's mostly when you go into more specific yarns. And I know we've been saying single ply and like drape, and you know, I feel like almost every question. But when I think about this, so for example, at the moment I'm wearing our yarns, one of our yarns that's called Journey Sport. It's non-super washed. It's plied. It's a sweater yarn basically. So then with that, what you can do is you can basically make anything.
Yep.
You know, so you don't really have to think about that. Then with this, of course, if I wanted to make a shawl that has a lot of drape, might not be the right thing for that. But if you have like a yarn that's more like I'm just thinking in my head, like an alpaca blend or something that has mohair, that's like on the fancier side, then of course, then when I think about these yarns, I think about drape. So then is it better to make a shawl with it? Is it better to make like a loose sweater or a tunic? You want to think about, when you have a yarn, you want to look at this yarn and you want to think, what are the quality of this yarn? What is this going to do? And then how does it translate into a project?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you've got those little, you know, like memento skeins. from trips and things like that. Another thing too is a color. Is this a color that I want to wear next to my face? It's key.
That's
very
practical.
practical.
That's a whole other thing. And I do think that people can wear any color they want.
Absolutely.
I don't think that somebody shouldn't tell you that you're not supposed to wear a color, or
No, but are you going to be happy with it? I guess is yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is true that, depending on of our hair color, our skin tone, some colors bring out different aspects, just because that's just how color works. And then if you're happy with it, I think it works. On that matter, one thing that I find interesting, and that's, again, it depends, and I think it's on every aspect of creativity. One thing that I find very interesting when picking out colors, either for a color work, okay, so let's say you're doing a color work project, you need 3 colors, or you're picking out a color that you say, sometimes, when people say, does this color suits me? The way that this works in our brain, at least, is, your eyes, through your eye, your brain is always looking to rest, okay? So, so what happens is, if you come up with a color selection that complement each other, so that has like a little bit of everything, it's almost like your brain goes, oh, I can relax, my job is done. Okay, and that's why some colors we find look better on us than other, just because the whole color wheel is present in this combination. Does it always have to be this way? No. It's just that if you pick a color that's like not relaxing, that's like missing a part of the equation, well, that's exactly what it's going to do. And that's why we find that some colors are more bright, or appear more bright, or it's funny because in my mind, I word stressful in my mind, but that's not what I mean.
Hopefully no color choice is stressful.
But do you understand? Exciting, when it becomes more like livening. Yeah. And that's just what it does, is because your brain is not relaxing.
Interesting.
You're looking at it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be bringing a whole bunch of color wheels up to my face later in the mirror. Where is my complementary color? Actually, this is a good segue too, because I have so let's talk about for yourself as a hand dyer. Some of your colors are really soft, undulating within the same color family. Some of them have a bit more variability in the color. Do you choose specific colorways for different projects?
So I will say the way that our palette is built, and it's just because of how we compose colors, in the studio, we work with primaries. So because of that, like every color that we make has a little bit of all the other ones. So weirdly, for us, at least when we make the colors, they sort of all go together.
Yes, they do. It's very hard as a yarn shop to try to decide which colorways of yours to bring in, because they're all gorgeous and they all go together.
We work, like when we make the colors, we only work with like 5 things.
Yeah.
And then they all come from the same. So then they all go together because they all have a little bit of each other. But then if you are to pair colors together from, like, I don't know, different brands, or just like, or if you're thinking, does this yellow goes with this green? Again, that's like a totally other topic. But when you're choosing colors, it really depends on what type of mood you want to exude. And then it comes back to what I was telling you about, like resting and just seeing all the colors. There's also this theory in like when you paint, if you put paint colors together, so it's almost like, it's not that you want to, but the more, so let's say you have 2 colors together. If, like, let's say this is navy blue and then this is yellow. If this yellow has a little bit of the same of that navy blue in it, then they're like they're like buddies, you know?
Yeah.
But then if it's a yellow that doesn't have any blue in it, it still goes together. It's just much more brighter.
Right. Yeah.
So then it really depends on what you want it to look like. So for color work, maybe you want like really high contrast, almost like primary colors together. But then if you go more on the moody side where all the colors have a little bit of each other, it is going to appear softer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. More visually jarring versus kind of congruous.
And it doesn't matter. It's just an option. It's just a perspective.
Yeah. We do a lot of color layouts in the store for color work projects. And it's always, again, it's like, what's the right answer? And it's like, some people love high contrast. Some people love low contrast. There's no right or wrong.
No.
Yeah. It's just, what do you want to see? Yeah, there's no right or wrong. That's always the way it is. Are there any like yarn traits that fight different patterns or anything? Like, is there any absolute no's that you would never, as for your own personal practice, I should specify?
So I'm looking at my notes and I have so many notes. What sections are we?
Oh, I'm in section 3, yarn first.
Okay. What do you decide? Don't do this. That fights the pattern. So what the note that I had written here is what I was talking about earlier about color work and and no bounce and like choosing the right yarn.
Yeah, totally.
So that was my note, and maybe because I really like to knit color work, I really try to get a yarn that sort of behave the same way in my hand that's going to behave when I wash it or wear it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have a couple.
Go ahead.
So my yarn traits that fight the pattern, it's not even like yarn traits that fight the pattern. It's more making your life easier as a knitter. So if you've never used a really, really high, like a really silky or slick yarn, and it's your first time doing that, do not choose a really technical, lacy or cabley or textured pattern because the yarn wants to leap off your needles. And if you drop a stitch, it drops all the way down really quickly.
You need to master one before the other.
Exactly right. So it's kind of, especially like I'm now through the Christmas retail experience where I see people, they put a lot of pressure on themselves. Oh, I want this to be really special for someone, so I'm going to choose this beautiful silk, and it's a hand dye yarn, and this is this really complex charted pattern that I've never done before that's got 3 skills. And it's like, that's a lot on you as a knitter. I often recommend, if you're choosing a brand new technique that you're trying, swatch it on a cheap yarn. Don't do it on the precious hand dye or the beautiful Julie Asselin yarn that you splurged for. And then when you inevitably make a mistake, you're like, oh.
Well, it's true that sometimes you need to make some practice run.
Absolutely.
I remember making, so it's fun. Just mitts, okay? Yeah. And I wanted to showcase like a special end spun that I had. And of course, because it's small, then you need to cut, and you're using the yarn. And then I didn't like the mitts.
So it's a lot of technical work you did. Yeah.
And especially because you've used up that special yarn. So
exactly. So just make it a little easier for that. And then the other thing too is like, just watch again, like really technical projects with difficult to use yarns. So like, plant fibers in general, because they're less elastic, they're a little bit more slippery, they're always going to be a little bit more difficult to use than animal fiber, generally speaking. Doing cables in a linen dominant yarn, you can do it, it's just going to be really tough. And I don't know if you'd like the outcome in most, well, I shouldn't say that because now I'm thinking of some cool design options, but all right. Anything else? I mean, we're kind of through most of our prepared statements, but I want to make sure I'm not skipping over any gems of knowledge that you have written down there, Julie.
No, I just think, again, I find like, I'm thinking in the moment, I'm like, did we miss anything? But probably. But also, again, as I said, we're going to prepare a little checklist for you to look at and just all the information that we've talked about. So then people can sort of relax and look at it
Exactly.
later to be fine.
Exactly right. Yeah. So that quick reference, which of course won't capture anything, but truly Julie and I could be talking for 7 hours and we would still we would still have some things that we missed. That's just how it goes. Did we have any questions, viewer questions that we want to answer? I'm looking over on my second screen here. Hold on, scrolling.
Hi to everyone that's watching.
Yeah, hi to everyone that's watching. I'm looking over, I've got my Instagram second screen here. But yeah.
Because I know, most of the time when I make a video, I'm always like, oh, bonjour, hi, bienvenue. So welcome to everyone.
I have one question about what do we mean when we say yarn biasing?
Oh, so it's just when we're talking about bias, it's either yarn, that single ply doesn't have anything to balance it out. So then when you're going to knit with it, it always leans the same way. So then your fabric is going to go this way. And it also does that when you're knitting in the round, because you're always knitting in the same direction. It is also biasing because of that factor. So basically always, when you don't have anything to balance it out, it also applies to in the round, because when you would be coming back, you would be balancing out your stitches. So that's what it means. Yeah.
I have a question about yarn splittiness. What causes yarns to split and why?
Twist.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, sometimes it's a weird fabric, like a weird fiber combination. Like if you have a strand, a lot of times if you're looking at summer yarns that are blended with wool, so like wool linen, depending on how it's milled and how it's plied, sometimes if it's like a ply of linen and a ply of wool, they'll fight against each other a little bit. Beautiful upon blocked, but
there's some yarns also, and it's not necessarily bad, you just need to be aware of that when you knit, is there are yarns that are basically two yarns just put together.
Yeah.
So that's also like, you can see it in the skein, you'll see that like the two strands are sort of, wound together. They're not necessarily plied and seamed that way. Yeah. So that's going to be splitting. And but it's not necessarily bad, it's just you need to be aware of that. And but splitty for me is really about twist.
Twist. Like twist and sometimes fiber, sometimes like cotton will always split.
Fiber.
If you're gonna knit with cotton, you just expect it to split most of the time, which is fine. It's totally fine when you knit it.
That's how it behaves.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
You would never notice, and how splitty a yarn is won't affect how your fabric looks at the end of it.
No,
that's more of a knitting experience thing.
As the artist.
Exactly. Yeah. One thing that we haven't talked about, Julie, is needles and yarn. Do you have one set of, and this is like just a question for me, do you have different sets of needles that you use for different yarns, or do you always go to the same set?
No, I do have, I have some metal ones that I use a lot, and then I do have a set of bamboo or wood needle. I like to, if the yarn is really still slippery, I'm going to use wood for me personally, but most of the time I'll knit with metal. Yeah.
I'm the same way. I prefer metal too. I have wood for when I go back again to like slippery plant fibers, but I feel like physically I'm slower knitting on wood needles, and I get frustrating.
Yeah, I think my stitches slip more too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But again, that's all personal preference. No right or wrong. Any common questions that you get, Julie?
Well, I was looking at your section. So, like if you're thinking the fabric, so my swatch is limp, what should I do? You can definitely change your needle size. If you've achieved your gauge for the pattern, then you might need to change yarn. If you find it too limp. If you're at gauge and you're thinking this is the type of fabric that I want, but I find it too limp, you need to get a yarn that's going to fill out those stitches a little bit more.
Yeah. Or you could, the other option too is that you could add to your yarn. So you could add a strand of mohair, add a strand of lace weight alpaca, lace weight wool to bulk it up. And sometimes you can get some really cool color fabric effects with that.
And also, and I think the main thing that I get when it comes to yarn that, sometimes people have like trouble with, and I know we talked about this a lot, but pilling. And then people are like, oh, I knitted this sweater. There's a lot of pill in the underarms. You really need to choose if your main quality for your sweater is durability and easy care, then you need to choose longer fibers, stronger yarns. You can make your sweaters with any yarns that you want, but if you don't want to depill, then you need to stay away from the shorter fibers. And also, what did I want to say? So sometimes I find that gauge, like people will say, oh, like my shawl ended up not as drapey as I wanted it to be. My sweater is too stiff. Don't be shy to switch pattern, to switch needle size. If the yarn and the pattern combo is not good, you just need to find another option.
Yeah, and the other thing too that we haven't talked about with patterns is the stitch pattern is like the difference between stockinette. This is a whole separate conversation, but like stockinette and garter. So the reason why I bring this up is that I'm actually wearing, controversially, I'm wearing a failed sample at the Beehive today, which is in your yarn, Julie, and it's a failed one. I know, but it's a great example because I think the vast majority of knitters, myself included, this is not the first time I've worn this sample, nor will it be the last. It's a beautiful piece. It just wasn't an effective piece for my store to show off your yarn. Do you know what I mean? So this is a beautiful shawl from a Vancouver designer. Where am I going? Right side, wrong side. There we go. So it's absolutely gorgeous. We knit it, and the sample knitter who blocked it, she didn't block her swatch as aggressively as we would have hoped. And so what happened was that when she knit the final piece, it's just a little bit more open than we had expected. Not that you can really see in this light, but when you look at it in person, so what would happen was it was already loose. Yeah, so it was already on the loose side. And it's a pattern in garter stitch, so we knew it would drop because garter stitch is literally like, it's the bunched up. So as it ages, it's going to drop and drop and drop. And so we knew, even though it is so soft, even in my webcam, I don't know if the viewer can see, but in my webcam, I can see the shine of the silk. It's soft, it's gorgeous, it's squishy. But we knew that if someone was walking by and thinking about using Fino in a garment, this would not be a successful sample to show off for that. True. So it was just kind of a funny thing where it's like, again, what was my desire as a knitter in this case had nothing to do with how it wears. It was to do with what is the fabric showing another knitter. So very unique perspective for us. So when I say failed sample, what I mean is, for the express purpose of what I wanted it to do when it hung in the store, it didn't do its job. As a wearable shawl, absolutely gorgeous, highly recommend.
I know that. Okay.
Yeah, so I think I've gone through, we didn't have too many questions, so clearly we've covered on all possible topics, or we will have a lot of emails tomorrow.
Perfect.
Awesome.
We will answer your emails.
Yes, exactly. So next on the list is that we just have to, anyone who follows us on social media or subscribes to our newsletters will receive that little resource checklist for choosing yarns. So we're really excited to get that to you. Julie, is it possible for you to do a quick recap of some of the points we've talked about today?
Yes. So I'm going to go off the little recap that we have on the show note because I think it's done really well. So you need to decide on the desired fabric first. So do you want drape or do you want structure? What does your pattern need? What are you looking for? As you were saying, like, do you want if it's a sweater and it has a structured collar, it needs to have structure. If it's a shawl and you want it to be open, then you need drape. Fibers, construction, twist will predict the behavior of the yarn when you buy it, and you know by looking at the fiber content if it's going to be drapier, if it's going to be warm and lofty, if it's going to be durable based on the twist. So that's something that you can do before buying yarn. Then you can adjust needle size to get the fabric you want. Not because if a pattern calls for a certain needle size and you get the gauge and you don't like the fabric, then you need to pick another yarn. Or you can play around with the needles if you want, and then maybe switch sizes depending on what it is, or your shawl is going to be bigger, all of that. And then you need to choose projects that match the yarn's natural strength. And it just, it makes sense that, some yarns, as we were saying, like when you're looking at yarns at the shop, thinking what this can become, you need to think about projects that are going to match the yarn that you have chosen.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Julie. This was such a pleasure.
I forgot to show you, but these have been around for a long time. But I will just say that two of the books by Clara Parks, the Knitter's Book of Wool and the Knitter book. Oh, I don't have the cover anymore. But the Knitter's Book of Yarn. Yeah. These are two really good books that you can look for if you want to learn more. And there is also this one called Fleece and Fiber Source Book if you sort of want to geek out about fiber content. Do you have this book? I really enjoy it.
I have read it, but it's not in my shop. But I know you should get it though.
So the Fleece and Fiber Source Book. And also one thing we haven't talked about, and then it's just like if ever somebody's listening and they want to look into that, you can also look into fibers tensile strength, the same way as metal or any other component have a breaking point. Fibers do have that too, and it does play into the durability of your project. I will also mention, we have a couple good books, and there's things that are coming to later on by fellow Canadian Anna Hunter.
I was just about to say, absolutely.
To say the true cost of wool, sheep, shepherd, and land. If you want to get to know more about Canadian wools, that's also a very good resource.
And she has, just very, very specifically in wool, she has actually an online talk that's about choosing breed-specific yarn or breed-specific wool for your project. So that's what we're talking about today, but on a much grittier level.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was informative.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And
it was for me. I love talking with you, and I like it when you have someone else perspective. Sometimes you think about things differently. It's very interesting.
Yes, I know. Me too. We're gonna have to find a time to go out for a drink, Julie. I'll meet you in Winnipeg.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.